Hello and welcome to PFF Fantasy Football Podcast. I'm your host, Ian Hartitz, and today we continue our 32 for 32 series with a look at the Miami Dolphins. The 2020 season didn't start off great, low 0-2 skid, but all of a sudden Brian Flores got this defense moving, and Ryan Fitzmagic is not dead or even a below average quarterback yet, people. The guy was still balling out, led them on a nice winning 3 of 4 games in their bye week. Then it was Tua time. He comes out, wins his first 3 starts. Was he getting a lot of help around him? Sure. But I think he also got a little bit of a bad rap in terms of what he was putting out there on the film and on the field. So kind of got a weird quarterback controversy going throughout this team that no one really expected to be all that competitive anyway. Ultimately, they lose to Buffalo 56-26 in week 17. Shouldn't let that take away from a 10-6 campaign that again exceeded just about everybody's expectations. So 2021 and beyond, looking more optimistic for Miami Dolphins fans and faithful than I would say any stretch that we've had in quite some time here. So Brian Flores obviously has the guys playing hard. Hopefully now we can get a little bit better personnel and talent throughout the roster to truly make them a contender sooner rather than later. I have a very special guest on today to help me identify just what positions of need do need to be filled out to get the 2021 Dolphins as a legit contender in the AFC. He is a Miami Dolphins beat reporter for The Athletic, Josh Tolentino. You can follow on Twitter at JCT Sports. Josh, thanks for the time, man. Happy offseason.
Ian, really appreciate it. Like what you mentioned, we're in the offseason, but for the Dolphins, it's a busy one. Obviously, them holding the 3 and 18 overall pick in the first round. They've got 4 picks in the first 2 rounds. But as you alluded to earlier, this team is a lot closer to competing than they were a year ago when they were arguably the laughing stock of the league. Brian Flores has brought them. He doubled their win count from 5 to 10 this past season. Heck, if they were in the NFC, they would have made the playoffs by 2-3 games. So, they missed the playoffs by 1 victory, obviously falling to Buffalo in week 17. That didn't help their case, but they're so much closer to contending than they were just a season ago. So it's going to be a busy offseason for the Miami Dolphins, Brian Flores, and general manager Chris Grier.
Yeah, I feel like it's kind of the sexy thing to say that, a team is just a good quarterback away from truly being a high-end contender. But, Dolphins, okay, there's a couple more needs I think they could fill out. But, if Tua can really take a step forward or if they bring in someone else, I'm sure we'll talk about that throughout the course of the podcast. But truly, this is anyone's idea of a solid team going into 2021. So Josh and I go through 3 team needs, go through some 2021 workload stuff, and he will leave us with a bold call. So Josh, start us off with your 3 team needs for Dolphins ahead of this offseason.
Yeah, I think they're very 3 evident needs, and for 3, the third one I'll have a 3A and 3B. The first is they need a wideout. They need an explosive playmaker, and this is what Chris Grier acknowledged in his end of the season exit interview, is that they need to surround Tua with more weapons. I think there have been so many people critical of Tua, and they look at the stats and very lackadaisical, pedestrian. He went 6-3 as the starter, but he didn't really blow up in any game outside of the Arizona Cardinals game. Very, very average stats, leading this team to victory. They were a very defensive-minded first team, and that's why Tua had a lot of his success. You also got to look at who he was playing with. Yeah. Devontae Parker, the team's top receiver, Myles Gaskin, the team's top running back, they were gone for most of that last month, as the Dolphins were trying to fight for the playoffs. I remember vividly in Las Vegas, I was the only beat writer who traveled to that game. So I was in that brand new empty stadium that they have in Vegas, a magnificent facility. Ryan Fitzpatrick has this, miraculous comeback. The recipient of that catch, I think that iconic catch that, that throw he made with his helmet, torn the sideways, was Matt Collins, who was the, arguably the 6th or 7th string wide receiver at the beginning of camp. So you have to remember that he was playing, that Tua or Fitz, whoever the quarterback was, they were playing with 4th, 5th, 6th string guys. They were literally missing, Mike Gesicki, Devontae Parker, Preston Williams at the end. And even when those guys were in, it's you got to argue that they need an explosive playmaker. You look in the offseason, there are guys available: Juju Smith-Schuster, Allen Robinson, T.Y. Hilton. That's free agency. And then obviously in the draft, Devontae Smith, a lot of talk, Jalen Waddle, and Jamar Chase, I think, are your top 3 options at wideout. So that's number 1. Number 2, it has to be running back. I think, we saw some glimpses from Myles Gaskin. I remember also before that same Vegas game, everybody was hitting the DMs as, is Ahmed starting? Is Because that was a championship week for fantasy.
That's right.
Man, I mean, but Myles Gaskin, Savon Ahmed, they both showed promise, but there was just no clear answer there. Last year they signed Jordan Howard. They dealt for Matt Breida, two veteran running backs who they thought would help the league's worst rushing attack from the season ago. Those two guys clearly could not help, and they were not the answer. They went from 32nd to 25th in running production, so they're still at the bottom of the league. Who do they go get? Is it maybe an Aaron Jones? Is it a Najee Harris? There are definitely options both in free agency and in the draft. So the top two positions are going to be wide out and running back. 3A and 3B for me will be a linebacker, preferably an interior linebacker, maybe an edge guy. I know those are two different positions, but a linebacker. And then also offensive line. I think as we saw in the Super Bowl, that you can improve the offensive line no matter how good, no matter how bad they are. And last year, the Dolphins, they did invest in the offensive line. They got 3 rookie offensive linemen, Austin Jackson, Solomon Kinley, and Robert Hunt, who all ended up starting later in the season. But, when there's so much intrigue, like a Penei Sewell, there at the top, and the Dolphins having the number 3 pick, they definitely have to think about it. So those would probably be the 3-4 main positions of need, is the 2 playmaker positions on offense, wide out running back, and then linebacker, and also offensive line for that third need.
Great stuff. Yeah, I mean, on defense, linebacker is really the only spot that makes a ton of sense to put resources in, because they just have so few there at the moment. As it stands, Dolphins, Broncos, and Browns are the only teams with fewer than $4 million allocated to their linebacking core ahead of the 2021 season. But yeah, it's, let's build up the offense. The defense, number 6 ranked scoring unit last year. Obviously, Flores is doing great things schematically. I think we can all agree they're in a great spot there. Arguably the single best cornerback room in the entire league at this point between Howard and Byron. Great stuff over there. But yeah, on offense, it's just like everywhere. And I'm happy you didn't say quarterback, because look, let's find out what Tua has. And if you can find a way to get Deshaun Watson or something, that's great. But like 28 teams should be looking for Deshaun Watson. I don't think this should be, an indictment on Tua. I mean, you brought up the receivers he was throwing to. Man, like Bengals and Chiefs games, I mean, Jakeem Grant drops a 95-yard touchdown down the middle of the field. The Chiefs game, there were 3 or 4 plays that Tua just seemed to pull out of thin air, and his receiver just couldn't come down with it. I mean, you spent a 5th overall pick on the guy. Let's add some legit explosive playmakers and maybe give the guy, a year where he's not coming off this terrible hip injury before we give up on the guy.
And yeah, you bring up a great point. You bring up Matt Collins, Jakeem Grant, again, to the Vegas game before Tua got removed. And then even the guys that Fitz was playing with, their top 2 receivers were former college quarterbacks, rookies. Lynne Bowden Jr., who was drafted by the Raiders, and Malcolm Perry, former college quarterback at Navy. Both of those guys were college quarterbacks, and now they're in the NFL, week 16, trying to make the playoffs, playing wide receiver. I mean, one of the toughest positions to not only adapt to, but learn and develop with. So it's like, you got to surround Tua with more weapons. You got to give him, something to work with. And, they definitely have some options here with the number 3 pick. And not just that, they're in position to spend some more money in free agency after, spending the most money in free agency last year. A lot of it allocated to the defense, that $200 million they spent. So now it's time to fix the offense and get them up to the competition of like the Bills and the other contenders in the AFC.
Yeah, right now, 5th cheapest overall offense ahead of, just in terms of 2021 dollars devoted to the overall core. You brought up, the offensive line. They did draft, multiple guys last year, so hopefully the continuity improves that. But yeah, PFF's 20th ranked unit in pass blocking last year, 30th in run blocking. We just need help everywhere, and hopefully the injury bug goes away a little bit with Preston, Gesicki, and Parker. To your point, bringing all that up. They're going to add receivers to some extent, but do you see Parker, Gesicki, and even Preston Williams, if he can get healthy, still kind of being the main trio, or could it be as a big enough overhaul that we actually see one of these true big name first round wide receivers, or the Chris Godwins of the world in free agency potentially get a just offer they can't refuse to come down to Miami?
Yeah, I think you think about that trio. That's a great trio that you mentioned, but there's still so much unknown. Specifically, I'll point out Preston Williams. Undrafted last year. It seemed like he was like kind of a diamond in the rough type player, that they found this gem, goes out and has that season ending knee injury. This year, Tua's best game against the Arizona Cardinals, Tua throws him a touchdown, which was a tremendous catch. Preston Williams dives into the end zone and he suffers a season ending foot injury. I mean, those are two very serious injuries, and it's like at a point where, you know, if this continues to happen, he only played 8 games this year, had less than 300 yards. And even when he was healthy, and I know was that he was combating that mental issue of coming back from that knee injury early on. It's tough to, you know, especially if you're supposed to be a guy that's counted on to relieve the workload from your number one receiver, Devontae Parker. So ideally, I do think, you know, that is a formidable top 3. There are just so many question marks in regards to that third guy with Preston Williams that they really do need to invest at wideout, and they can't depend on their current arsenal of weapons. It's like, you know, they've got a lot of talent in there, but in regards to top tier consistency outside of Devontae Parker, I don't think there's much there. It's just a lot of depth.
There's a pretty wide range of potential outcomes, and if we could just boost that up a little bit more towards a positive range of things, that would certainly be ideal. Yeah, Preston Williams, man, only 16 games, unfortunately, but this dude, for him to come out the way he did, I mean, undrafted, I remember just watching those 2019 preseason games going, who the hell is this guy making plays all over the field? So, you know, they got Parker signed. Hopefully Preston can stay healthy, but yes, absolutely, let's get some other complimentary guys in there to make life easier for everyone involved. Those 3 team needs, everyone, again, were wide receiver, running back, and then 3A and 3B, linebacker and offensive line. We're gonna move on to some 2021 workload related stuff here. Josh and I are recording this on February 19th. So, you know, barring a big time trade coming out. Unfortunately, got the Eagles and Colts podcast scheduled just a day and 2 after the Wentz trade. So hopefully, I'm knocking on wood, we'll be okay from that standpoint. But as things stand right now, we'll get Josh's thoughts. First up, the Tua question. We've talked about it a little bit before. Didn't have enough help. We should be surrounding him with more assets. But, you know, just it was weird last year, man, because Flores was saying, hey, you know, we want to play the best player. Fitzpatrick's been playing better. I don't think that shouldn't even really be a slight on Tua. Like, Fitzpatrick was an above average quarterback in the NFL last season. Tua, first year coming off the hip injury, first, you know, 5-6 starts. It shouldn't be shocking that, you know, Fitzpatrick was necessarily better. With that said, I mean, we just never really saw a huge commitment to Tua like you might expect, you know, a longer leash like a rookie quarterback to have. Do you think the Dolphins majorly address QB in any way this offseason, or is it legit the Tua show finally?
Yeah, Ian, I'm going to pose a quick question to you real quick. If you had two options, I'm going to give you the first option, the second option.
Okay.
You'd rather have you know, in their first 9 games, go 6-3, 1,600 yards, 10 touchdowns, and 10 interceptions, or would you rather have, so that was 6-3, 1,600 yards, and 10 touchdowns, 10 interceptions, or would you rather have 6-3, 1,800 yards, 11 touchdowns, and 5 interceptions?
I'm gonna take the latter.
Yeah, of course, the latter. So the latter was Tua. The first was Drew Brees. Drew Brees went on to have, I mean, fantastic career. You know, and then, I mean, there's just this graph that I'm looking at that compares Tua to a lot of the great quarterbacks in the NFL: Russell Wilson, Aaron Rodgers, Drew Brees. Tua, I mean, as pedestrian as of you know, rookie season we thought he had, because I think there were just so many comparisons with Joe Burrow. And obviously Justin Herbert, man, Tua is like kind of right on pace to you know, continue following this you know, these great quarterbacks, assuming that his development, you know, trends in the right direction. I know that's a big if, but again, we got to surround Tua with more you know, not question marks, but surefire talent at wideout, at wide receiver, and not just that. You mentioned the patience with the team. I think the team has done a lot of things to make Tua comfortable this offseason. You look at 2 specific things that are public. They hired a quarterbacks coach by the name of Charlie Frye. Charlie Frye obviously has NFL history, but he also has history with Tua. He's been in Tua's corner since his early high school days when he was at Elite 11 camp. So that's one of Tua's guys. They went out and hired a quarterback coach that Tua likes. And then you look at the offensive coordinator situation, and so many outsiders, they question if it's going to work, a co-offensive coordinator between Eric Stewsville and George Godsey. But you got to remember, George Godsey, he was the tight ends coach for the Dolphins. His very first game where he kind of took over as quarterbacks coach this year because of COVID, because COVID hit some of their assistant coaches, including their quarterbacks coach. So they needed a quarterbacks coach for that game. Guess what game it was? The Arizona Cardinals. That was Tua's best game. So coincidentally, nice. You know, that's someone Tua also enjoys working with George Godsey. George Godsey, Charlie Frye, those are, two behind the scenes coaching moves that have been made to make Tua comfortable. So now they just have to surround him with the proper talent in order I believe, for him to reach his maximum potential and ceiling.
Yeah, and man, even like I'm looking at his game log right now, and I understand like the overall stats, compared to Burrow and Herbert, didn't quite stand up with him. But just look at the specific games where Tua really struggled. First career start against the freaking Rams, best defense in the league. Goes to Denver against Vic Fangio's defense, notoriously one of the tougher, schemes for a rookie or really any quarterback to try to, combat. Patriots game wasn't great against Bill Belichick. The Raiders game, which you brought up, he's throwing the freaking things named Malcolm Perry and, Eagles cast off Mac Hollins. And then, the Bills game at the end, just trying to do a little too much and just couldn't quite come out with it. So there was a lot of good football in between, some admitted down moments. Please, people, do not be giving up on Tua just yet. Wasn't that long ago that tanking for Tua was the entire nucleus of offseason discussion. Let's see what the guy can do with some better weapons and just some continuity in 2021. You mentioned running back being a big spot team need. It was surprising last season to see them not address it more. It was a real popular landing spot for a lot of these rookies. Ultimately, they traded for Breida, signed Howard. You brought up how, obviously those didn't work out. So do you see them maybe making a leap and going after a Najee Harris type high end in the draft, or do you think it'll be more, similar moves to what we saw last season, where they'll address the position, just not with too many resources? Because Gaskin, even if he's not, no one's going to confuse him with a top 10 back, he certainly is capable of functioning as at least an average talent on all three downs.
Yeah, and I thought they had actually, depending on the take and, how you view those names, but Matt Breida and Jordan Howard, not too many years ago, those were guys that used to be elite top end running backs in the NFL. You had thought that the Dolphins had done enough to address the position. Obviously not. Those two did not work out. Myles Gaskin did emerge, in his sophomore season as a consistent contributor when he gets those reps. So I think Myles Gaskin is definitely someone they've got to keep around. He's pretty explosive, and not just that, he's got that kind of cutting ability to make defenders miss. And one more thing, he's a workhorse.
Yeah.
The other thing though is that I don't think he's that top, NFL RB1 running back. He's a great consistent producer when he gets the opportunity, but in extended reps, it shows. You've got to commit more at that running back position. You mentioned Najee Harris. We actually just finished a mock draft for the Athletic NFL by every single beat reporter. And I actually took Najee at 18.
All right.
And there's going to be question marks there. They should invest at the linebacker, at that position, assuming that they get their wide out, or, Panay at 3, or if they trade within that top 10. But I like Najee Harris a lot. And, it's not just him. There are other options. Also in free agency, Aaron Jones is a big name that's obviously floated around. But definitely running back is a position of need after the past 2 seasons, finishing 32nd and 25th in production at the running back spot.
Yeah, I'd love Aaron Jones, or even, and Harris has some receiving chops as well. Just, people hate the first round running backs, and they don't want to see that, high amount of resources allocated to the position, but let's get someone that can catch the ball as well. And Aaron Jones, since he entered the league, number 3 behind only Austin Eckler and Nyheim Hines in yards per route run when split out in the slot or out wide. It was one of the most annoying parts of the Packers, kind of usage of him, not kind of using him more as that true receiver. Would love to see his opportunity to do that in Miami. Last thing before we get your bold take here, mentioned this guy previously, start off with the Raiders, came on at the end with the Dolphins. Lynn Bowden, man, he was a lot of fun. Now, I have a soft spot for these, running back, wide receiver, hybrid types. Do they have a position? Are they versatile? I love the players, and they can just kind of go line up in a lot of different places. Bowden, he was playing some quarterback a little bit and did that even in college. Do you see him as a long-term fixture in this offense, where they actually come in next year with more of a, featured plan for him game in or game out? Or was that kind of late season success more of just because, hey, look how many freaking injuries they had to deal with everywhere?
Ian, if you don't mind, I'm actually going to read the quick description I have of Lynne Bowden Jr. and a roster breakdown.
Let's hear it.
Yep. Whoop. That sound you heard was in your head was Lynne Bowden Jr. zigzagging past all of us. You allude to, Ian, the how exciting he is. He truly is. He's one of the most exciting players to watch with the ball in his hands. There were many instances when he had the ball where, he's going sideline to sideline. It's like, what is he doing? And then he ends up getting, 10, 15 yards. He truly is like I think one of the best quotes from this season was from Chan Gailey, former offensive coordinator now. He said, growing up, you can tell which guys played tag, and Lynne Bowden Jr. was one of the guys that was really, really good at tag because he's so good at making people miss. So whether it be having him develop at that slot spot, if they continue to use him as a gadget type player in the backfield, split back, whatever it may be, jet sweep type things, even involving him as a quarterback, having some trick plays. He did have a couple, trick passes this year. He was a former college quarterback at Kentucky. They got to get him more involved because it seems like almost any time he touches the ball, some type of magic happens on that play. Definitely a rush of adrenaline. It's like, what's going to happen next within those milliseconds of him having the ball, him deciding what to do with his cuts. Definitely a very intriguing player. They've got Malcolm Perry there too, another guy with a similar skill set. But from what we saw in the rookie seasons, Lynne Bowden Jr. is the more exciting player right now.
Yeah, and I understand if, some of your listeners out there weren't super tuned in those late season Dolphins games, although they were competing for a playoff spot, but truly, anytime number 15 got the ball, good things were happening for that offense. We'll see if he gets enough touches in 2021 to be truly, a week-to-week fantasy relevant guy, but either way, expect a lot of fun when they do get him the ball. Josh, great stuff all around. Do you have a bold draft free agent, maybe 2021 workload projection take for us?
Man, Ian, we've mentioned his name a few times, and I know I had drafted Najee Harris in, number 18 in our mock draft, but that wasn't with the, interpretation that we could sign free agents. So I'm going to go out and say, they spent a lot of money last year. They can make it work this year. You look at the numbers, you crunch the numbers. There are a couple moves that they can make to prelude this. But I'm going to say they go out and sign Aaron Jones. Aaron Jones, come to Miami. Come where, you're going to, I don't want to say be put in the right situation because obviously, he was playing with one of the greatest quarterbacks and a top offensive line in Green Bay, unhappy with his contract situation. Come to Miami. Miami's got money to spend. They obviously, pre-Jalen Ramsey's contract, they signed Byron Jones last year to the most expensive contract to a cornerback. They got a lot of guys, Kyle Van Noy. They allocated a lot of money to that defense. Aaron Jones, come to Miami.
I love it. And I was on talking to some Milwaukee radio yesterday. They asked me if I thought Aaron Jones going somewhere would be better or worse for his fantasy, just potential. And it depends on where he goes, obviously, because, hey, Packers number one scoring offense. You said it yourself. Like, he was still great there. But if you bring him down this Miami Dolphins offense, give him that 3 down near every snap rule that Gaskin had. I mean, Gaskin only caught, 3 fewer. Yeah, okay. He caught 6 fewer passes than Jones in 4 fewer games. Like, again, nothing against Gaskin. He's fine. He's solid. But we put a legit blue chip talent like Jones in that offense. This dude could go the hell off. And, hey, if we put him in Miami, man, he would be a legit top 10, if not top 6, 5 running back in fantasy, man. I'm already talking myself into getting him even higher. So love that and hope that does come to fruition. Great stuff, Josh. Everyone make sure you follow Josh on Twitter at JCT Sports. What do you got in the docket the rest of the offseason?
Hey, Ian, one more quick note on Aaron Jones.
Oh, yeah.
You think about his skill set and how he loves to, decipher the defense really, really quickly after the snap. Those intermediate throws is what became apparent this season. Imagine, Aaron Jones coming out of the backfield, just slipping out to the side in the flat, and making plays there, arguably one of the most explosive players, just being able to explode down the sideline. I mean, that's like
top 4.
Yeah,
up even more.
Yeah, exactly. Pretty sight to imagine. But obviously, we're keeping busy over at The Athletic with a ton of drafts, a ton of off-season. Free agency is just about a month away. The draft is 2 months away. So a lot of hype leading up to that. And as we mentioned throughout the show, the Dolphins are in a very busy position. Chris Greer, he's got to have like a construction hat on as he constructs this roster because they're so close to being actually able to compete. I think one thing we learned is that the defense, and you got to assume this with a defensive-minded first coach and Brian Flores coming down from New England. It's going to be his 3rd year here in Miami. He got this defense to where he wants it to be. Now it's like, let's power this offense. The defense literally carried them in so many games this year. Just imagine if they had, 1 or 2 more explosive playmakers helping Fitz, or now Tua out. I think Fitz has to get out of the picture. They have to move forward with Tua. Deshaun Watson rumors aside, that this is Tua's team. let's go surround him with weapons and move forward.
Let's go do it. I love it. I'm looking forward to watching many. I'm more excited about watching 2021 Dolphins than I have been in years. Tua and that defense, major reasons why. Again, people follow Josh on Twitter at JCT Sports. And thank you as always for listening to PFF Fantasy Football Podcast. He's Josh. I'm Ian. Until next time, take care, everybody.